December. I can't believe that this year is already almost over, that Christmas is almost upon us, and my favorite, the Advent season has begun. So today I am sitting down to film a video in that spirit, highlighting 18 patterns that are perfect for your Advent yarn calendar if you have one, or using up some of your scraps as we go into the new year. So I also have a delicious drink with me. I'll put in some clips of me making it at the beginning most likely, but this is an Earl Grey hot chocolate and I'm loving it. I think that this is going to be my drink of the season, and it's in this cute little cat Christmas mug. I'm feeling very Christmassy. I'm filming on December 2nd, so it's still quite early for the Christmas feels, but I just have a chocolate advent calendar, but I opened my first 2 chocolate windows today and we're in a great mood. Also, I am wearing the Daft Cardigan by Burton Rose, and I knit this in 2 strands of a lace weight baby alpaca yarn by the brand Yarnalia in the color rose gold, and then held with Fyberspates Cumulus in the color fig. So anyways, I think that is all our admin, and let's get into it. I hope you're as excited as I am for some fun, scrappy, or Advent-oriented projects. So let's do it. The first pattern, and I will be looking at my iPad, so if you notice me looking over in the corner, I just want to make sure I get all the details right of these patterns. All right, the first pattern that I'm going to recommend today is the Friday Shrug pattern by Jackie Rose. This is a free pattern, which is great, and it uses DK weight yarn, but it's made to hold 2 fingerings double, so there's a lot of sections of marling between your different colors to make a more kind of cohesive, instead of color blocks, a more cohesive gradient of colors. And this is just a great pattern, I think, for using up probably not an entire 24 skein yarn advent, but if you have a smaller one, or you do have a good amount of scraps, you could definitely use this pattern to use those up and make something that's gonna, kind of elegantly sit on your shoulders and keep this part of your body warm, but still let you, show off whatever shirt you have underneath. So I really like this pattern, and I love that it's free. The Jackie Rose also has some paid versions of similar patterns, but this Friday Shrug version is free. So check it out. The second, and I forgot to say yardage on this one. It requires 1230 to 1830 yards of fingering weight yarn, which you then hold double. So if you are just using a DK weight, you can half that. The next pattern that I'm going to recommend is the Seaglass Tea by Wool and Pine. And this is actually part of a series of patterns. So they have the Seaglass Tea, the Seaglass Hat, and the Seaglass Sweater. So you could make any of them, but I'm recommending the tea today because I think it has the perfect amount of yarn to use up a kind of 24 skein advent, or a good amount of scraps, but not too many that the sweater may take. So this pattern uses 960 to 2040 yards of fingering weight yarn. You also, when you buy this Seaglass Tea pattern, you get the Seaglass Hat included, and it has a very interesting construction so that there are no ends to weave in, and it is fully reversible. So it's a great way to use up scraps where you get to use a lot of colors and do a lot of color changes without having to worry in the end about weaving in a million ends. So highly recommend. This whole line of patterns looks cute. I've thought about making the Seaglass Hat before, but this Seaglass Tea is also really fun. And if you had a coordinating advent, or maybe like a gradient one, you could make a really nice kind of cohesive look, or you can go full scrappy, like throw everything at it and have something kind of really fun and colorful and very unique. So it's a good pattern, a lot to do. This next pattern took my breath away when I saw it. It is called the Quinns Quilt pattern by Marinja Knits, or Marinja Knits, or Marinja Knits. I'm not sure which. It uses DK weight yarn, so if you have a fingering weight, You could hold everything double, or, you know, if you have a bunch of DK weight scraps or a DK advent, you could definitely do that. So it's a whole kind of quilt construction where you're adding in a bunch of different colors to make this kind of quilt inspired star. And it's all in garter. It's beautiful. It also, I really like that it comes with a kind of coloring sheet to plan out all your colors. In this one, I think that she uses, the sample uses not 24 colors, it uses less colors, so you need more of each. So I think you could make this into a great advent color calendar pattern if you add in some more colors. And the total yardage you need in DK weight is 2,740 to 3,010 yards. So it's a little bit above just your advent calendar, but there's a lot of white as well. So you'd probably want to get a more neutral skein to add in as well to get you to that final yardage number and make something so stunning. I think that this is gonna have to go on my plans for future knits. And now that I'm looking at it closer, it might actually be all stockinette. So I'll double check, I'll have something on the screen about it, and of course the pattern's down below. But yeah, so stunning. The next pattern that I want to recommend is the Pocket Full of Posy blanket pattern by Pearl Soho. I really like this pattern because it's in 2-color brioche, so you're using a really neutral, in the pattern it's white, but you could use, you know, a gray or beige or whatever neutral is to you. Sometimes I consider pink a neutral in my wardrobe, so whatever your kind of neutral color is, and then for one of the colors of the brioche, and then change what colors you're using throughout the blanket to make this kind of really nice fabric where there's a lot of different colors going on, but it all does look connected and not just blocked because you are using the white or your neutral color throughout to really make it a little more cohesive. I also love brioche. I think especially in a blanket it would be so thick and squishy. Some details about this: it is a free pattern, as most Pearl Soho patterns are. It's fingering weight, and you need 2,633 yards of fingering weight yarn. So it's a great idea. You could add more colors, do less, whatever you wanted to be able to use up the scraps or advent you have. I know I'm recommending a lot of blankets in a row. I was kind of looking up certain categories of things, and so I have a lot of blankets in a row, but I think blankets are a great way to use advents too, because it is quite a bit of yarn you get in an advent or at the end of the year with all of your scraps. It's a lot of yarn and you don't have a lot of it, so blanket's a great way to use it up and get to kind of experiment with knitting in a new way. So without further ado, my next recommendation is the Beekeepers Quilt pattern by Tiny Owl Knits. This pattern, I've seen a couple other people make it before, and it is really stunning. Like it's so cute and kind of quaint, very eclectic, I think, because you are making all of these tiny little, they're called hexy puffs, because they're like little puffy hexagons. So you're knitting all of these. Apparently they're all knit in the round, which is interesting. And then apparently it's very easy to join them at the end. The designer says that it only took her 2 days to join, you know, all of the hexy puffs she'd made over a year. So it's a great way to also use up kind of a bunch of little yarn scraps. At the end of my projects, you know, all the ends I'll cut off, I keep those normally. And I just used some of them. I made some like stuffed stuff and used them in those. And I think that if you, like me, kind of hoard all those scraps, you could also use up all of those to puff or stuff all the little hexy puffs. In the pattern, it calls for kind of traditional stuffing from, you know, a sewing or fabric store, but if you wanted to go more use up what you have route, I think using up all your little ends and bits of yarn would be a great way to make this happen. And it is so cute. It's fingering weight. There is no yardage estimate. You can kind of just stop whenever you want. I think looking at it, I imagine that each puff or hexy puff would take maybe 4 grams. That is a complete estimate, but looking at the size of them and based on other things I've knit like that, I would say maybe aim for 4 grams, which would be in fingering about 20 yards, I think. yeah, a normal, what's 80 divided by 5? It would take, I feel like this should be way easier to do in my head, but can I do that in my head? Why can't I do that in my head? 16 yards. It would take about 16 yards, I think, to make one of the puffs. That's a complete estimate though. But yeah, very cute. And an old pattern. I've seen a lot of people do it before, and I've seen a lot of people as well kind of have it as a years-long pattern or project. So you can easily continue to build on it as you go. So you don't have to have it fully finished after your one Advent this year or after your one kind of scraps dive this year. So it's a great way to continue to build on. My next recommendation is the Maxine Hot Water Bottle Cover by Laura Penrose. This just came out 2 days ago when I'm filming. It uses DK weight yarn and it uses 481 yards of it. It is, as the name says, a hot water bottle heater. It's in Fair Isle, and so it uses some really nice colors. And one thing I love about Laura Penrose's color work patterns is they always come with a coloring sheet to help you identify what colors you want to use and where. So I think this pattern calls for 6 colors total, but there's a version with less colors or more. So you can really play around with what you have to make a really nice palette. And well, you are not going to use up a 24 skein Advent in this. You know, you really only have 5 contrast colors and then 1 main color, or even 3 or 2 contrast colors, main color, whatever you want to do. You're not going to have enough to use all of your 24 skeins. But if there is a palette you really love out of your Advent, or you have a smaller Advent, or you are using scraps, I think that this is a really wonderful way to use them and get something that is going to bring you a lot of joy and keep you warm over the winter season. So yeah, and it just came out, so had to be included. All right, the next pattern that I'm going to recommend is a little bit more unconventional for a yarn Advent, but I think that if you put some thought into it, it could look amazing. And that is the Spot Sweater by Anne Venzel. So originally this pattern was just done with 2 colors, and it's kind of got these little triangles and then like dots. And it looks really nice as just the like one kind of background color and then the dots in a darker color. That also looks wonderful, but Anne Venzel just released a color guide to go with the spot sweater, and you can use this spot color guide to add in more colors. And so a new sample came out with it that uses, I don't want to count, but quite a fair amount of colors with it, which just looks wonderful and would be a really fun way to use up a nice Advent. I think that this would be better if you had some more tonal scraps or a more tonal Advent, but it's totally up to you. And then you would also need some mohair or another kind of fluffy yarn to pair with it, which I think would help the cohesiveness, because, you know, it's all maybe the same mohair throughout. If you got like a nice colored, like nice neutral colored mohair or something. And it's just a really pretty sweater. I really want to see someone make a nice Advent out of this, or a nice sweater out of their Advent. Or this specific sweater. I would really like to see someone make this spot sweater with their Advent. I don't have a yardage estimate because it really depends on what you hold to get the gauge. It is a DK weight, but you know, in the pattern they have like a fingering plus mohair, or fingering plus lace, or a sport plus lace, and different kind of variations there. So definitely look into the pattern a little bit more to make sure you have the yardage you need before going gung-ho at it. But you know, I think you could figure that out based on the base that you have of your Advent, and how to modify. The next pattern is the Daft Cardigan by Rebecca Clow. This I think was also very recently released, and it's a really nice pattern. She made 2 samples, one just all in black and white stripes, and then one where there's kind of an oatmeal background color, and then a bunch of different colored stripes. And it's a DK weight pattern. It uses 1,015 to 2,228 yards of DK weight, and it's it's just really pretty. It would be really fun to do this with your advent. I think that there are enough stripes that you could do, you know, 24 different colors if you wanted. You could probably maybe repeat a few, or you could take out some of them and do like 12 colors or something, so that it's slightly more cohesive. But you could really go either way to make it like super fun, include everything, or tone it down a little bit. But it is a really nice cardigan, and would be fun to be able to kind of wear throughout the season after, to, you know, have used your advent in such a way where you can identify each one. So yeah. The next pattern that I will recommend is the Scrappy Stripe pattern by Mona K. This is a free pattern. It uses DK weight yarn and between 1,137 yards and 1,312 yards of DK weight yarn. And it's really nice. I like that, you know, it's a very neutral body. It's all in one color for the body, but then you kind of have this explosion of color on the sleeves, and it's written obviously based on the name for using scraps of yarn, but you could also definitely use some advent yarns or mini skeins as well to make a really nice sweater with like a really fun sleeve. I think I definitely want to make something with a fun sleeve one day. I'm not sure what yet, but it's a great recommendation for doing that. The next pattern is the Anthology Throw by Helen Stewart. It uses fingering weight yarn and 2,112 yards. It is stunning. I've seen some people make this pattern before, and it's really cool because compared to a lot of other blanket patterns I've seen, this is made circular. So you end up with a very, you know, circular, it's a circle obviously, throw at the end, and I think that you can really nicely use it as a blanket or put it on the floor to make it look nice, or the way that Helen Stewart is holding it, it's kind of almost like a shawl, which it's probably too big to actually be a shawl, but I really like it. It's a really great statement piece, especially kind of with the lace motifs put throughout, and a great way to do an advent. It's specifically made for a 24 skein advent, so you would be set there if that is what you were trying to find. The next pattern recommendation is the Polston Scarf and Wrap by Amy Loudon. This is a beautiful pattern. I really like the lace motifs here, and there's a couple different variations where she has one sample in which there's blocks of the same color repeating, like a neutral kind of white tone, and then the different colors, and then she has samples as well where it's just all different colors throughout and kind of in a gradient. So I like the versatility there, and it's really beautiful. It uses 1,422 yards of fingering weight yarn, if I didn't already say that, and yeah, it would be beautiful to use up some advents or again scraps, depending on what you're trying to use up. And it's really nice because, you know, seeing those two samples where they put in a neutral in the middle means you need less of your colors because you're adding in this kind of neutral repeating color. So if you don't have a ton of yarn, or you have a ton but you don't have you have a ton of different colors but you don't have a ton of each, that's a great way to do it. Or you can do kind of the nice gradient, really depending on what you have, which is awesome. I love that kind of flexibility because there are many different types of advents. Sometimes, you know, you might not want to use all the colors or have multiple projects going from it. So it's really nice to have the versatility of that. The next pattern is the 24 Days Sock pattern by Potter and Bloom. This is pretty obviously written for a 24-day advent, but you could add more colors. Probably couldn't add more colors, but you could add less colors if you wanted. You know, either make it repeat or make some of the sections bigger, or, you know, use your advent. That's, you know, if you're watching this, you probably have an advent, honestly. It uses fingering weight yarn and between 212 and 328 yards. So it's a pretty small amount of yarn, honestly, for the socks. So it's definitely not going to use up all of your advents. But if you kind of have a few little scraps left over, or you want one project with everything included, and then you'll do a bunch of other projects after, but just to like kind of memorialize this Advent as the designer or dyer intended, here is my one really nice project of everything, and then, you know, you can experiment with different combinations for other projects. And I think it looks like maybe 2 rows of each color are used, so you would end up with pretty much still full skeins of everything once you're done. The next pattern is another sock, and it is the A Scrappy Good Time Socks pattern by Crystal Tea Knits, and I really like these. I like the variety in samples. There's a lot of different kind of leg lengths that she shows off, and a lot of different amounts of each color, or different amounts of colors, so you can see that there is a lot of ability to adjust the pattern to include whatever yarn you have, or whatever palette. You know, it's not like you have to meet 6 colors, and if you include more, it's gonna mess it up. If you include less, it's gonna mess it up. Like, there's a lot of flexibility in how you do your color changes to modify for what yarn you have. So I really like that. And I also I think I really like Advent colors or Advent projects, or projects for lots of different colors that have a kind of cohesive neutral or some element that makes them cohesive, like a marling effect or a patterning to kind of not to break up the barrier between colors. So I really like that there is a neutral color throughout this pattern, and that there's kind of some patterning that goes on to not just have it be stripes or blocks, to, you know, let the colors kind of bleed out a little bit more, like move around a little bit more. It just feels a little bit more fluid than, you know, a traditional color block sock or something like that. The next pattern that I will recommend is the Bundled Up Socks pattern by Knitting Expat Designs. It uses fingering weight yarn and 383 to 437 yards. I also don't think I said the pattern before also uses fingering weight yarn and 400 yards. Sorry, I'm so used to socks where it's just like, duh, it's fingering, but I should say it for everything. But back to the Bundled Up Socks pattern. Yes, fingering weight yarn, 383 to 437 yards, and this is really fun. I would say that this, at least the sample, is an explosion of color. I think that you could tone it down for sure, or tone it up even, but I really like the amount of colors, and kind of what I was saying about the last one, where there's an element that allows the colors to blend together. The patterning here, of kind of making these almost scallops, means that the colors are more bleeding together. There's no harsh lines or cutoffs between different colors. So I think that despite the amount of colors, it still comes off as cohesive because you are blending them together. And it could be really cool to make a marl with this pattern, or not a marl, but a gradient. Sorry, a gradient with this pattern would be really nice, or, you know, going for it completely and adding in just like a bunch of crazy colors either look amazing. So this would be very fun. And I like too that compared to a lot of the other patterns, this sock pattern is sampled in very variegated colors. And so, you know, a lot of the other patterns have a lot of different colors, but they're all kind of in a tonal family rather than super variegated. And so it's nice to have, you know, something where you can use all your variegated skeins and still have them blend nicely together, because it does add kind of another element of color texture, which can be complicated to then pair with other variegated skeins. So it's a good thing. The next thing I will recommend is the Brio Adventure pattern by Jonathan Tallow. This is a shawl pattern, and it uses fingering weight yarn and between 1,094 and 1,312 yards. I love this pattern too. It uses brioche, so it is utilizing 2-color brioche, and I really like that the way it does the 2-color brioche is that whatever the main or background color of the last section is now the kind of contrast color of the new section. And so when you add in a new color, you're still bringing up the old color, and so that goes throughout to, I think, really help blend the colors together. It's kind of almost a marl where you're like putting these two colors together, but you can still see them and they're distinct. I also really like that there's, you know, eye cords between each new brioche section to add a lot of interest and kind of break it up. And so yeah, it's just really pretty. I really like the color choices of the sample too, going from this kind of like chartreuse or like limey green to a very nice purple and then more lighter tones, and it almost ends in like a pumpkin-y orange. So I really like it. I think it's going on my list for myself if I get an advent next year. Fortunately, I did not get an advent for myself this year, and I don't think I have enough scraps to pull this project off, but as soon as I have some nice colors to pair together, I'm making this. It's beautiful. My next recommendation is the Paul Klee sweater by Midori Hirose. This is the same designer of the Ranunculus, and I really like this pattern as well. It uses fingering weight yarn, and then it uses 383 to 1,717 yards total. This pattern's really nice because it goes from a young child size all the way up to I forget the exact bust, but I think it's quite a size inclusive pattern. So it goes from, you know, children to more plus size sizes as well. I think at least in the 60-inch range, 60-inch bust range, I should say. So a lot of variety there. That's why there's such a big range in the yardage totals. And it uses 27 to 37 yards of yarn per color block. And then based on what size you choose, you will do between 14 and 24 color blocks. So you could choose to use the same color multiple times. You know, if you are using complete mini skeins, each mini skein has 80 yards, so you could do each color block between, I think about, 2 times with those mini skeins to make a nice yoke. Or add in some different colors if you're using scraps and you have a little bit more. Maybe you can do like 3-4 of each color, something like that to make a really nice sweater. I've seen a lot of people's patterns with this. I was kind of scrolling through, and some people just use one color throughout to make their little the motif at the top. Some people use a different color for every single one and might make it kind of like a gradient going around, which is really cool. Lots of different options basically. And then you know, it's nice that then it's just a traditional yoke sweater after that, and so you just find a really nice neutral that you enjoy and goes well with the colors you chose, and then you get your fun statement, but then it's still a very wearable piece. So yeah, we're almost done already. Look at us go. I guess I've been filming for almost 30 minutes, so the next pattern that I will recommend is the Broken Seed Stitch Socks pattern by Hana L, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her last name, and it might be Hana as well. There's an umlaut, so I'm a little bit lost, but by Hana L, and it's fingering weight pattern. There's no yardage estimate, but given that it's a pair of socks, I'd say between 200 and 400 yards of yarn would get you the socks. And I should say that it's a free pattern, but it's not a fully built out pattern. So I would not suggest this for beginners. Looking at other people's notes and looking at the description of the Ravelry pattern, it includes how to do the stitch pattern, and some of her notes as she knit the socks, but it doesn't include, you know, cast on this many stitches, do this. Like if you need any modifications that you normally have as far as different sizes, or something like that, you'll have to reference another pattern. But there, I feel like you could use the Summerly Knits, or is it Summerly Designs, basic I'm So Basic socks. That's a free pattern and it has a few different sizes, and so if you are concerned about not being able to do this pattern because it's not a fully built out pattern, I say if you pair a basic or vanilla sock recipe with this pattern to get the stitch that you want, you would be able to do it. And I really like this pattern because it uses 2 colors, like a lot of my other favorites where, you know, there's one color throughout, and the way I would do this for an advent is have that one neutral color throughout and then kind of use a bunch of different colors in the background to make a really nice, cohesive bunch of different colors or scrappy project. So I think that would be really fun. I think I want to make this. I really like this pattern and I'm intrigued by the broken seed stitch, so I think I will be trying it in the near future. The next and actually final pattern I want to recommend is the Sweet Shop Blanket pattern by Laura Penrose. This was released not too long ago, and if you watch any other knitting podcasts or are more present on knitting Instagram, you've likely seen this pattern. It really took a lot of the online knitting world by storm a little while ago, especially given the amount of detail that Laura Penrose put into the design as far as how to join each piece together, thinking about, you know, how people can customize it to make different sizes, providing a coloring sheet to show how you can make the different colors for it. So it's a really well thought out pattern. And again, I like that, you know, you have a neutral color in there so that it makes it a little bit more cohesive. So even though you have a bunch of different colors in variegated versus tonal and like all this different stuff going on, you have the neutral color next to it to really tie everything together and subdue it a little bit. I've seen so many people's versions of these and they look so stunning. I think a lot of people are planning to use their advents this year, and one of the things I love is that Laura Penrose did put a lot of thought into how to make sure people could use advents for this. So each square I think uses about 10 grams, or all of the kind of color triangles I think use about 10 grams. I could be wrong. It could be more like 5 grams. I can't remember exactly, but it's a very detailed pattern, so it'll tell you. And I know that each triangle, Laura Penrose made sure you can get at least 2, if not 4 squares out of each of your mini skeins to make a really nice blanket. So it's, you know, designed to suit advents if that's what you're looking to do with it. Of course, you could just use your scraps as well. And it uses between 2,078 and 8,661 yards of yarn. So it's really nice too because it's all these selvage edges, so you can stop and start whenever you want. You know, if you reach a rectangle size and say, this is good for now, you know, you run out of scraps or you're sick of working on it, you can stop then. And then when you have more, you know, if you get another advent next year and you want to add on to it, you can do it then. So it's a really nice versatile pattern for that as well. So those are my recommendations for today. Thank you for sticking around as I went through these 18 patterns. There's so many more. I did make a Ravelry bundle, so that'll be linked below, and I highly recommend you check out some of the other patterns on there. There are so many that I wanted to recommend, but I decided that, you know, 18 was probably getting up there already. I probably should have recommended less. But please check out the bundle as well. I know like the Stella quilt cushion also by Laura Penrose is on there, and I put some of the pressed flowers motifs, I think similar to the broken seed stitch socks. You could really nicely have your main color be consistent throughout, and then the contrast color in the background kind of change that out, make a nice gradient or something. So lots of different options, some more conventional geared towards advents and scraps, and some more creative where you might have to think through like, okay, how am I going to incorporate this? Like there's a lot of great ways to incorporate different colors in here and make kind of a more unique version of a scrappier advent project, but just maybe uses a little bit more thought to adapt the patterns. There's also on that bundle some scrappy projects that just use very small amounts of yarn. I think there's some Christmas ornaments, but also like hair bows or scrunchies, things like that that don't use a lot, and you could have, you know, if you have just a really special amount of yarn left, or, you know, in the case of the Christmas ornaments, you want to highlight each of your mini skeins, you can make one of each of all of the different quantities you have. Or I'm planning on doing this. It's called the Tiny Tree Socks pattern by Summerly Knits, and I will be replicating each of the socks I made this year. We'll see if I get to it, but I'm planning on kind of making mini versions of all the socks I made this year so that I can either make a nice little garland or put those on my tree. So lots of different ideas, and you could do that, you know, with an advent or the socks you've made as well. So lots of different ideas for using up your stash or scraps or getting into that fun advent. I'm jealous of all of you who got your really fun advents. I'm definitely living vicariously through the people posting on their story every day what the colorway of the day was. So if you are doing that and maybe feel a little bit awkward about it or feel like no one's watching, please keep doing it. I'm watching. So yeah, that's all. I hope you are having a great start to December, and if you celebrate Christmas, you're getting excited for Christmas and enjoying the Advent season. If you are not celebrating Christmas, I hope that you are just having a great end of year and enjoying the coziness of the season, and hopefully doing something you enjoy in the winter. So yeah, I will talk to you all soon and have a great day. Bye!